How do you end up working with NASA? That's up.
Well, so that was through a company, ME Electrometal, and their foundry, and they poured the original crawler transport shoes. So the crawler transport takes the shuttle out to the launch pad, and so it's, we've worked with ME back and forth. They're very large foundry, and we had a connection in there, and they brought that opportunity to us. And when that whole deal started, I think they said they had like 180 some potential companies that NASA was looking at to utilize. Yeah, so then they go through this vetting process, and it came down to us and I think a company out of Alabama, I want to say. And what we did is the scope of the project is basically to take the underworks, or the crawler propel portion of the crawler transport, and we're going to rebuild that whole underworks. And so what we did is we took a mock bore. So we built this, because a lot of this is welding and machining and mechanical. So we built up a mock bore, a mock setup, and then NASA came out. There was 13 people that were involved, and we literally would weld up a bore, and then we'd have stop points. They would come in and do an inspection, and then we'd set up our bore and bars, and we'd machine it. We'd have stop points, and they'd remeasure everything. And that was a 3-day event. There was 13 people here from NASA. That was a 3-day event, and they basically qualified us, and they sat in our boardroom for about a day and a half discussing as to whether or not we were qualified to do this job. We got the word that, we were awarded that project, which was incredible.
This is before. You haven't been rewarded the project yet when you're doing this.
Right. So we're going through a phase because they got to make sure. I mean, look, that project was 1,300 components is what we built. And when you're dealing with the United States government, you got to get it right. I mean, it's got the very, very tight tolerances. And especially where it's the NASA project. So there's 1,300 components that went with that. And then the documentation on that project alone, we had basically 18,000 documents verifying specs, material, just cradle to grave. I mean, it was an extensive, heavy engineered project that our guys did an amazing job on. And so when they sat down and went through that whole process, they said, yep, you're qualified to do it. And they awarded us that job. And then we moved a field crew out of Gillette, Wyoming, got them down there to Florida, and they stayed down there. I believe it was an 8-month project. So they disassembled the track system, the propel system, jacked the machine up, and then went to measuring and welding and machining out the bores. And there was phase 1, phase 2, and phase 1 was basically fixing the kitty corner sides of the track frames. So they jacked them up and they fixed those, set them down, they wrapped track, and then they had NASA came in with their guys and they inspected everything, make sure it was good to go. And then once they verified that, then we went to the opposite corners and jacked that side up and rebuilt that. So that project actually started in 2011 and it ended in 2015.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. I want to understand though. I mean, if I went today to bid on a project for NASA and they told me 18,000 pages of documentation in the way our company's set up right now, I'd go, that is absolutely wonderful. And I hope someone enjoys doing that. I wouldn't even be able to look at it. How did you understand the scope of, I know this is kind of a strange question, but did you understand what you were getting yourself into?
Not
on this.
Not at first. I mean, honestly, we didn't. So we bid the job, and then some very kind folks came back to us that we bid the job, and they said, no, you might want to look at your bid the scope and rethink about the man hours that this whole deal is going to take. And so our initial bid, basically, that they knew like, hey, these guys aren't used to working for NASA. And so we came back, and it really took, you know, a gentleman that works for us. He's an engineer by trade. He's a job coordinator secondarily at the time. And he spent a ton of time, and he looked at that project, and he says, I think I can do it. If I assemble the right team around me, I think I can do it. So he took the helm from a project management standpoint. He took the helm on that side, and then basically brought in picked out some of the engineering group, and then from the field service and manufacturing, or the production side of the business, then we had you know, guys like Jason Wandler, or Jason Percifield, who's ran our field service crew at that point, and he took that side of it, and they just meshed that thing together, and it was a group of people that made that happen. So it's really, those guys need recognition for that, because without somebody driving the helm and looking at that and saying, I think I can take that on. And then at the time, the ownership group to trust him and back him up, because it was a big liability at the time. You know, it's either a big success or a big flop, and it was a huge success.